yeah. I've noticed over the years that our language has changed. When I was a kid, bad really actually meant bad. And then as I got older, it actually meant good. And sick meant you were ill. And then sick meant you probably did a really cool skateboard trip. But today I want to focus on a word, a four-letter word, the F word, that has not changed in meaning, at least to my knowledge. When I was growing up, my family didn't use a whole lot of four-letter words. In fact, it wasn't until I got to junior high that I learned quite an extensive vocabulary. When I went in the Army, four-letter words didn't have any effect, so we got creative and we used regular words to make our point. Sometimes we'd string them along, and they were just ridiculous. But they were so absurd, they were funny. But there's one word that I learned in junior high, and it was one of those four-letter words that we didn't have to get creative with when I was in the Army. This word had more influence in my life than I would like to admit. So when we were thinking about this idea to do the four-letter words series, I was excited. I was going to get to say the F word, not just in church, but from the pulpit. Okay, the word's fear. So if you were thinking something else, then, well, at least I have your attention. Here's a video.
I fear. What do I fear?
What do I fear?
What do I fear?
What do you fear?
I know what I'm afraid of, but putting out there, it's a little bit hard.
Okay, breathe. You can do this. You can do this.
I have a really big fear of spiders.
Spiders terrify me.
I fear birds.
I fear roller coasters.
Heights.
The dark.
Ghosts. Thunder. Nicolas Cage.
It seems like a trivial fear compared to some other things I could be scared of, but that's my fear.
When it comes to like the big kind of fears, my biggest fear is that I'm gonna end up alone.
I'm so afraid that no one will love me or that no one will care for me.
I'm afraid that I'm just always going to be that way and I'm not going to find anyone.
One of the things that really freaks me out is losing my hair. And that is something that I have to come to terms with because
Around here, so many people are scared to leave, but honestly, I'm scared to stay.
This is the first time in my life where I'm actually getting a say in what happens, really. And it scares me a lot because I don't want to make the wrong decision. I don't want to screw up.
I battled drugs for 3 years and messed my life up pretty bad. I've been clean and sober for 2 years, but I very deeply fear relapse. It's a daily struggle.
Going back to that pit of anxiety and depression, self-harm, and not being able to eat or sleep.
I don't feel anything anymore. I don't feel happy. I don't feel unhappy. I just feel empty.
What I fear the most is to feel empty. You see, when I was 8 years old, my mother had cancer and she passed away. Next Saturday, it's going to be a year since my dad passed away as well. So I really do hate to remember those days because I don't want to feel like that again. It's like something inside of you, it's missing.
What I'm afraid of is losing people that are close to me.
And I know it's a part of life, but it's just so hard to think that someone who's been there since day one is one day not going to be.
I fear the future.
Growing up, realizing I'm living a boring life.
Stuck in your old routine of work.
It's often what others want for you. It's the easiest thing to do. It pays the bills. I don't want to live my life that way. And my greatest fear is that that is exactly what I'll end up doing.
I'm a little bit nervous about that.
That is what I fear most. That's what I fear.
But I don't like to dwell on what I fear, because if you just worry your whole life about what you fear, are you ever really even living? And I've kind of accepted that that's something that I'm going to have to deal with in my life, and that may happen to me, and it doesn't scare me. I'm okay with it.
If we didn't have struggles, we'd all be pretty boring people.
I feel like we live in a society and in a world where we let our fear keep us from doing the things that we really want to do. How to use your time for something that you love.
Fear causes people to cower down, which is terrible. No one should have to feel like they have to back out because of something they fear.
Fear itself is in your head. It's a mentality.
It's not bad to admit that you're afraid of something.
Feels good, I think. Fear can keep you going.
We just must learn how to deal with it.
So,
Well, y'all, it was nice seeing you. They just did my job for me.
yeah.
Just kidding. Fear. This simple four-letter word has way too much control in our everyday lives. It lurks in the dark corners of our mind, and it tells us lies. It can paralyze us and keep us from reaching our true potential, but it can also cause us to do really good stuff. Now let me be clear. The fear that I'm talking about goes beyond our survival instinct. Fear itself is not real. It's a product of the thoughts that you create. Now danger, on the other hand, is very real, but fear is a choice to an extent. Jumping out of a perfectly good airplane is not natural. That's a danger, and it relates to your survival. If you go out walking in the woods at night and you come face to face with a bear, that's your survival instinct. That's danger, and that's very real. But if you're out walking in those same woods at night and you hear a twig snap, the fear that your mind creates in that moment is not real. I recently engaged a group of experts involved in a very scientific study. Okay, it wasn't scientific, it was Facebook. But the people were experts on their own fears. So when I asked the question, what do you fear? I got over 50 responses and posed in my inbox, and somehow they text me. I don't know how that works. Spiders, heights, claustrophobia, and finals topped the list of fears. But I was surprised to see the similarities of the fears that can either cripple us or spur us on to do something better. Fear of someone seeing past our false exterior to see that we are broken and fragile. Fear of loved ones not knowing how much we truly care about them. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of being alone. Fear of being unlovable. Fear of not leaving a mark on this world. Fear of losing someone that we care about deeply. Fear of losing a relationship. Fear of not being good enough. Fear of being a burden. Fear of dying too soon. I asked another question. What has fear kept you from doing? And I got more responses. I would move to a different city. I would have spoken up for people. I would have traveled. I would have applied to art school. I would have finished my degree. I would have told my boss he was a bully. I would have gone back to college sooner. The most specific response was from one of my teachers at seminary, who is a PhD in theology and is a brilliant person. Her response was, I would have taken an internship at the Children's Television Workshop working for Sesame Street, but I was afraid to move to New York. Fear robs us of our experience and our joy, and it keeps us from doing something that we either want to do or know we should do. In researching for this sermon, I found there's tons and tons of quotes about fear. Fear is false evidence appearing real. You can forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. Don't let your fear of what could happen make nothing happen. And they go on and on. Never let your fear decide your fate. There is no illusion greater than fear. Fear is the dark room where negatives develop. I like that. There's only one thing that can make the dream impossible to achieve, and that's the fear of failure. Dr. Smiley Blanton, who was a colleague of Norman Vincent Peale, wrote this. He said, fear is the most subtle and destructive of all human diseases. Fear kills dreams. Fear kills hope. Fear can put you in the hospital. Fear can age you. Fear can hold you back from doing something that you know deep down in your heart that you can do. So what's the benefit? What's the benefit of letting fear hold you back? What's the benefit of giving up on yourself, of giving up on living into your true potential? What's the benefit of letting fear control you? Now, unfortunately, we can all relate to this in some way. And personally, I know it all too well. It kept me from doing what I really wanted to do until not very long ago. I wanted to follow my dream, but I was afraid I would fail. I was afraid I would let other people down, and it paralyzed me. Now don't get me wrong, I'm still afraid of those things, but I'm not going to let fear keep me from trying anymore. And I'm sure not going to let my kids see failure because I am afraid. Now, I know a couple of you are thinking, hey, this is a great motivational speech, but we're in a church, so what does fear have to do with worship? If you do a simple word search in the Bible, you'll find that just the word fear, not counting terror or dread or any of those other words, you'll get over 5,000 results. It's one of the most used words in the Bible. But the thing that's true in every single case of fear is that it can be overcome. And there are a lot of references to fear, and I normally don't just agree with Rick Warren, but he pointed out something really good. If you look up fear not, you'll find that there are 365 passages that say fear not. One for every day of the year. And more importantly, we call Jesus Emmanuel. That means God with us. And that's a great thing. It helps us to face what we're afraid of. Now, are there going to be mistakes? Yeah. Is it going to be easy? Not all the time. Will there be issues? Of course. But it's not the end. Death isn't even the end. And I can prove it to you that even when things look the worst, fear didn't win in the Bible. Now, normally I would go to the Hebrew Scriptures and talk about Moses or David or Joseph, but since we're here in the season of Easter, this is the last week in Easter, we're going to talk about Jesus. Now, Jesus didn't let the fear of rejection or failure or death determine how he thought or spoke, or even the way he acted. He knew he was going to be rejected. He knew that they were going to betray him. And he knew that even those closest to him, the disciples, just didn't get it. He knew he was going to be humiliated. He knew he was going to be tortured. And he knew that he was going to be killed. But he also knew that death was not the end. Did you know that even though the death and resurrection happened, there might have never been a group that followed the way, that became Christianity? It's true. The resurrection could have happened and nobody would have ever known. Different Gospels have different accounts of what happened, even around the resurrection, but the Gospel of Mark, the earliest of the Gospels, has the most interesting ending. Actually, it has 3 endings. If you look in, you can just write this down. If you look in your book of Mark, chapter 16, verses 1 through 8. But all through Mark, Jesus would heal people and he'd say, go and tell no one. And when he performed a miracle, he would tell them, don't tell anyone what happened here. And now realize some of the people did, and that's why he had such a following before he died. And even though he's fulfilling prophecy after prophecy after prophecy right under their noses, the disciples can't even seem to figure out that he's the Son of God until it's almost too late. So the entire book of Mark is shrouded in this secrecy, and that's what makes this ending even more intriguing. And here's what it says. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so they could go and anoint Jesus' dead body. Very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they came to the tomb, and they were saying to each other, who is going to roll the stone away from the entrance for us? And when they looked up, they saw that the stone had already been rolled away. Going into the tomb, they saw a young man in a white robe seated on the right side, and they were startled. And he said to them, don't be alarmed. If you're looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified, he has been raised. He is not here. Look, there's the place where they laid him. Now go and tell his disciples, especially Peter, that he is going ahead of you into Galilee. You'll see him there just as he told you. And they were overcome with terror and dread, and they fled from the tomb. And they said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. That's the original ending of Mark. Now, Mark was written about 70 CE after the destruction of the temple, and like I said, it's the earliest of the 4 Gospels. And sometime later, someone added a verse 9, and then someone else added another verse 9 through 20. Why would they do this? It wasn't because of anything to do with Jesus being seen or unseen after the resurrection. It was because no one would be following this movement that was called the Way that long after Jesus' death had they not told someone. So I argue that those women overcame those fears and they told someone, and that someone told someone else, and that someone told someone else. Because if those first visitors would have been silent, we wouldn't be here today. Now, if you say, Jinx, you always go to the book of Mark, I tell you what, we'll go to the book of Luke. So Jesus is being crucified on the cross, and there are criminals on either side of him. And the one is berating him. If you're the Son of God, then you can get down. And the other one stops him and he says, hey, we deserved our punishment. This man's done nothing. And he turns to Jesus and he says, Jesus, will you remember me when you come into your kingdom? And if you want to look this up, it's Luke 23:43. And Jesus responds, I assure you today, you will be with me in paradise. Now, paradise conjures up a lot of images, but it's not palm trees and beaches. This word in this passage means something different. This word is actually not even a Greek word, it's a Persian word. And paradise in this Persian word means something completely different. If you go visit a king in Persia, you go to the castle or the compound that he lives in, everywhere you go with the king, there will be retainers and guards and people watching what you do, and you'll never be alone with the king. There's one place that the king can actually go to get away from everyone else, and that's paradise. It's an interior garden in the home, usually in a courtyard. And the only other person allowed in there, not when the king's there, is the gardener. When Jesus says, today you will be with me in paradise, he's saying you will be alone with me. What kind of assurance does that give somebody who is dying on a cross, who's afraid? You'll be with the king today. So fear is everywhere in the Bible, but the Bible is a library of stories of people overcoming those fears because God is with them. Look at all they did. Look at where they are now because of God being with them. And you're all a part of that story. And your story is still being written. What are you going to do? What will you overcome because God is with you? And it's true, God loves you just the way you are, but God loves you too much to let you stay that way. So what would you do if you had no fear? Now, whether you're 8 or 88, you still have dreams. And that dream might be simple, it might be complex, but that's your dream. That's your part of this story that continues today. Your contribution to God's kingdom. And I don't know what that dream is that you have. But here's what I do know. The dream that you're holding in your mind, it's possible. See, sometimes we can't say with confidence that I can do that, but we can say it's possible that I can have my dream. Most people, sadly, don't follow their dreams because of fear. Don't let fear win. Remember that God is with you every day. So go chase your dreams.